My name is Peter Costu, and I will be this evening's moderator. My goal is to allow the candidates to present and inform you of their platform. I'll now go over the agenda for this evening's meeting, which will consist of introductions, questions, and closing statements. The introduction by the candidates will be a maximum of 2 minutes, and the order has been chosen randomly. Next will be the questions, which have been pre-submitted and then previewed by the candidates. Answers will have a 2-minute time limit. In terms of vetting the questions, they were selected from a variety of submitted questions on various topics. Unfortunately, due to the time constraints, we cannot ask them all. In the end, we chose questions pertaining to topics that were most frequently asked. Finally, there will be a concluding speech from each candidate in reverse order from the opening remarks. There'll be a 2-minute time limit for this as well. And that will be it. There will be a bell that will ring at 15 seconds before your time's up. And it'll be rung twice when the time's expired. And then if it goes on after that, we have to take further measures. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. We'll ring the bell more. I've tried to make this short as I can. And so without any further delay, I would like to hand the mic over to tonight's first candidate for their opening remarks. And again, this order was picked randomly, and it's to Adam Chambers of the Conservative Party.
Good evening. Thank you, Peter, very much for the introduction and setting up this evening with our fellow candidates. Very nice. Of course, I would love to be with people in person, as was mentioned, but this will have to do for now. I'm Adam Chambers. I was born and raised in Midland. I went to St. Teresa's High School. My family's been in our area since the mid-1800s, and there's a reason why we've never left. It's because Simcoe North is one of the best places to live, work, raise a family, and retire. But we also need to make sure it's one of the best places in Canada to start and build a business. And so what I see in Ottawa right now is concerning. We see a government that for every problem that it sees, it thinks the solution is to spend billions of taxpayer dollars with no plan to repay that, which is going to create some significant strains in the future for future governments, our children, for tax increases, for an inability for future governments to spend on the social programs that Canadians all rely on because we'll have increased interest payments. So I'm very proud to be here tonight representing the Conservative Party. I think we have a great plan to secure the future for the country, and in particular for the folks and small businesses here in Simcoe North. Looking forward to our discussion tonight, where we can talk a little bit about the party's plans. And I appreciate you keeping an open mind, and we'll have a wonderful evening tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. 15 seconds.
Thank you, Adam. Next, we move over to Russ Emo from the Christian Heritage Party.
Hi, my name is Russ Emo. I wasn't as fortunate as Adam growing up in this area. I wish I was. I actually grew up near the airport, so more urban stuff. I moved up here in this area basically to have a better life for my family. It's amazing. I have a friend of mine who just opened a business up in Halliburton Forest. And just driving through, taking stuff up there this last week or so, it's stunning. Everything is absolutely stunning in this area. And, you know, when you see stuff like this and you see the people out there, and these people want to live their lives. They want to live their lives to the fullest. They want to enjoy life. And we need to be helping them to enjoy their lives, enjoy the retirements, or just enjoy growing up with their families. And we need to be a part of that. We need to be there. We need to be the voices for these people. And we need to get the spending and the out of control spending that's going on right now in Ottawa. We need to get that under control. We need to put money back in the pockets of each and every individual. And we need to get this country back on track and make Canada proud once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Russ. Next, we'll go from the Liberal Party, Cynthia Wesley, Eskimo.
Thanks for getting that pronunciation so right.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Wesley Eskimo. I'm the Liberal candidate for Simcoe North. I'm from the Chippewas of Georgian Island First Nation. I have been living on the shores of Lake Simcoe for over 20 years. I've been in Aurelia for over 3 years. And my ancestors have been here for thousands of years. So we know the area pretty well. Stephen, I actually work at Lakehead University. I've been at Lakehead for 8 years, 5 years in Thunder Bay, and I'm the chair on Truth and Reconciliation. I'm also the chair for the governing circle for the National Center on Truth and Reconciliation in Winnipeg, the University of Manitoba. And I've done an incredible amount of work in government, both provincially and federally. I'm very familiar with the process. I'm also very familiar with the platform for the Liberal Party, and know that the Liberal Party has taken a whole of government approach and has got every minister has a mandate letter that says very specifically what they need to do. Money is flowing out of the government, it's true, but it's going directly into the pockets of people that absolutely need it. And we still have lots of work to do. We're on our way to making sure we have a government plan that actually takes care of climate change, women, children, and basically everything that's on the agenda. So thanks so much for the opportunity to be here.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. Next from the PPC is Stephen Mack.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce myself and my party, the People's Party of Canada, to the people of Simcoe North. I'm a family man, married for over 35 years. I have 2 grown sons who I'm very proud of. I live in Victoria Harbour, where I also run a high-tech business with my family. I'm proud to design and manufacture consumer electronics products right here in Simcoe North, and we export them to the USA, Japan, and China. Yes, this type of thing can be done in Canada. I know how. I don't do easy things, and that's why I'm running to be your MP. I love my community and wish to be its effective, transparent, and open representative in Parliament. I'm a professional engineer with a degree in engineering science from the University of Toronto. Toronto's where I was born. Over years, I've grown my technical and managerial skills and have designed lots of products, some of which you might even have at home, or which government agencies rely on. I'm an inventor, and I have a couple of patents. I've run businesses large and small, from one-man shows to $150 million businesses. I've been a member of high-level government panels. I've been a successful entrepreneur too, and have signed both sides of paychecks. I know the real world and how to get the best out of people. I'm a facilitator and a consensus builder. I believe Canada is a great country, built on many heritages and anchored by Western liberal democratic Enlightenment principles. I hope you can entrust me with your vote so that we can move forward to do something better together. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Next from the Green Party, Crystal Brooks.
Hi, so my name is Crystal Brooks, and first I would just like to thank the Chamber for this opportunity to
speak to its members. And I feel that the Chamber really is the backbone of our economy, and it advocates for small businesses and the community. So thank you for allowing me to be here. So I am 28 and I am from Rama First Nation, and I am not a typical politician. My experience is more so personal experience, and I've advocated for a lot of different things throughout my life. I am a survivor of the child welfare system and human trafficking, and I am an addict and an alcoholic in recovery. I have experienced homelessness, and I just dedicate a lot of my time to advocating for these things because they mean a lot to me. They're things that I've experienced personally, and they're also things that much of the population also experiences. And I think that it's important that we offer those people a voice in this. And I also advocate for the environment and just a lot of things, and I'm just really happy to be here to do that. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. And last but not least, from the NDP, Janet Lynn Durnford.
Annie Tanche, bonjour, hello. I'm Janet Lynn Durnford, your NDP candidate in Simcoe North. I am a teacher, a spouse, a mom, a member of the arts community, a bird owner, and an almost 50-year resident of Simcoe North. I am running because I want to serve my community and because I share the core values of the New Democrats: empathy, inclusion, justice, and affordability. Small businesses are one of the engines of job creation in Canada and an important part of every community across the country. New Democrats believe that small business should have access to all the support they need to get through this crisis, grow, innovate, and stay competitive in Canada and around the world. We are proud to have a fiscal plan that will jumpstart rebuilding while making life easier for everyone and building a brighter future. Jagmeet and the NDP team are ready to make the richest pay their fair share while delivering the help that people and businesses need now. Our fiscal plan is based on the Parliamentary Budget Office's baseline. By raising revenue while investing in priority areas, our fiscal approach would not significantly impact Canada's projected debt to GDP ratio, meaning our finances will remain fiscally sustainable. New Democrats would manage debt and deficits responsibly, running deficits when required to rebuild and defend the services that Canadians rely on, and moving to balance when it is prudent. If you compare the party platforms, you will find that the NDP plan will result in the lowest projected deficit, $22 billion lower than the Liberals. We know that Canadians pull together and help each other during tough times. It's who we are. Now it's time for the government to do the same. As your NDP Member of Parliament for Simcoe North, I am committed to listening, learning, making connections, and working for you. Miigwech. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Jantlin. I can relate to the Zoom and the bird thing. I've been dealing with that last year and a half too. Now we'll move on to the questions. These are questions that have been pre-submitted by email or by phone. Please note that the purpose of this forum is to enlighten us on the position of the candidates rather than debate the issues. It's for this reason that the questions that will be asked tonight will be the ones that can be posed to all candidates. And again, we'll follow the same order. And the first question is, do you believe that humans caused global warming? And we'll start with Adam Chambers.
Thanks very much. There's a significant amount of evidence to suggest that humans are having a devastating impact in our environment, including on global warming. I do think we need to go beyond just thinking about emissions. There are tons of other ways of humans impacting our environment and pollution that we need to address. We need to reduce the amount of plastics that we use. We need to encourage companies to innovate more to help deal with our own waste that we create here. We also need to make sure our clean waterways remain clean. We are pumping billions of liters of raw sewage into our clean waterways every single year across this country. And in particular, even in Simcoe North, there are some raw sewage getting into our clean waterways. So I think, just focusing on carbon emissions, we are missing a huge, bigger picture of some real tangible things that we can do to reduce the human impact on the environment. And in particular, as we consider carbon emissions, we can do whatever we would like to do here in Canada. We can shut down the oil sands, we can stop all production. But if our trading partners like China, Russia, India, and the United States don't do anything, it doesn't matter what we do here. So the Conservative Party has proposed a carbon tariff so that our trading partners cannot escape their environmental requirements or their environmental responsibilities to continue to pollute without punishment. So any goods and services or goods that are coming across our borders from countries with lax environmental standards, we're going to impose a carbon tariff because we shouldn't be punishing our job creators and small businesses here while the other countries get to pollute without punishment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Adam. And repeat the question. Do you believe that humans cause global warming? And that's for Russ Emo. Just to unmute yourself, Russ.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, we'll give you back those 15 seconds.
Sorry about that. Technology. The question there, when he said that are humans to blame, I think there's other factors, but to say that humans are 100% at fault for global warming, I don't believe it can be proven. Even the founder of the Weather Channel, so this is a gentleman that's had many years, many degrees, started the Weather Channel. He's been on video and he's actually said that climate change is actually false. This is not me. You can look this up on YouTube, etc. And he says, but the big thing is it generates over $1 trillion in revenue. And that's huge to me. Where's the money going? That's I always wonder, where is this money going if it's generating this kind of money? And who do we ask? So people always say, well, you need to follow the science. Well, yeah, absolutely. We need to look at the science, but we also need to ask, are we asking the same people that would benefit from this money, whether they should be receiving this money? That's kind of an oxymoron to me. We're going to ask the same people who are going to benefit the most if they should be receiving this money. So that's always a big question about where the money's going. We hear about carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is actually a natural beneficial gas. It's not a pollutant. And to blame CO2 as a cause of climate change is it's an unproven theory. We cannot prove that. Not too many years ago, for those of you, I'm looking at some people here. I look at our Green Party rep there. She's just a young girl there, young lady, sorry, forgive me. Where we had things were going on about the ice age. We were told that many years ago, not too many years ago, that we were preparing for an ice age. So we're hearing a lot of climate alarmism out there. And what do we believe, and what can we believe? We had the Dust Bowls back in the 1930s. Not that I was around in the 1930s, but we did have the Dust Bowls in the 30s. All that being said, the CHP does recognize that we do have a responsibility to be good stewards and care for our natural environment. Our goal is to protect Canada's air, soil, and water from destructive contamination of man-made chemicals. Again, Adam had hit on this with the plastics and things like that. And the CHP, oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah, I know maybe you didn't hear the bell, I'm not sure, but yeah, it was going on. Next, I'll repeat the question. Do you believe that humans caused global warming? And that goes to Cynthia.
Okay, well, in my opinion, anyone uncertain about the answer to that question isn't in a position to offer any solutions on combating climate change. I think what we should really be asking is what we can do to mitigate climate change and how this planet, because as far as I know, we still have no other we can populate, will continue to sustain 7 billion people and counting. What we need is not only a sustainability and adaptive plan, we need a regenerative plan immediately, as well as a new and innovative approach to energy generation and use. I think we better start listening to our young people. They're relatively untainted by the freewheeling gas guzzling of former generations, and they have some very good ideas to contribute. They're pushing for alternative energy. They're buying hybrid cars. They're installing geothermal systems like I did over 20 years ago in my First Nation, and changing their approach to living and work. In the meantime, I think we can reduce the use of plastics to prevent it from ending up in our waters. We can certainly plant more trees. We can rewild everywhere and everything we can, and we can do a better job of protecting our wetlands and waters, such as the Wye Marsh. And we can move to regenerative practices for the land, like many in my riding are already doing. It's going to take collaboration, and I have talked to people who are absolutely doing that in the riding, and it's amazing the kind of things that we can start networking people into. So I think if you're uncertain about that answer, you're not going to be much help to us. We need to do something now. And that's really all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Again, I'll repeat the question. Do you believe that humans caused global warming? And that goes to Stephen.
Well, the answer is simple. Yes. It's a plausible hypothesis that humans have affected global temperatures through CO2 emissions arising from industrializations. Temperatures have risen about 1 degree over the past 150 years. Are there other possible contributing root causes for global temperature changes? Yeah, the world has been much hotter than it is now, and it's been much colder. Climate's always changing, but I see global warming as an issue, but not an emergency. The important question is what to do about it and with what level of intensity. I'm skeptical of the dominant narrative and intense emotional overreaction, especially by the young, because it seems just oh so convenient as an excuse to dismantle free market capitalism and reduce our comparative advantages or possibly introduce other things along with it. Canada is well placed geographically, demographically, and economically to handle a reasonable rise in temperatures and might even enjoy some benefits from this. Now, I find the virtue signaling competition among countries over who can set the more ambitious targets to be laughable. I see the Paris Accord to be an economic suicide pact when one considers that China, India, Russia, and others are increasing their emissions, building more coal-powered plants, and looking forward to outcompeting us on all fronts. Now, I'm not against alternative energy, and I think we should aggressively pursue it. And I think that solutions are going to be from engineers and scientists, not the tax man. I don't see any tolerable carbon tax as a working long-term solution or even a short-term one. It's just a boiling frog punishment until fossil fuel alternatives are first widely available and economical. If we continue to follow a one-size-fits-all solution, we're not going to get there. And a net zero strategy is depending on all actors, to good and bad, to be nice. I fear we'll just wreck our economies without reaching our goals. Let's mitigate and adapt in case the big plan doesn't work.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And next to Crystal, do you believe that humans caused global warming?
Yes, and I believe that it's irrefutable. The science has been clear for more than 50 years now, and there's lots of evidence to back this up. And I feel that much like our Prime Minister consistently says, things like climate change is real, this question also plants doubt in the minds of pre-existing climate deniers. And I think that we need to stop asking these questions and we need to just move forward from it. And humans are the primary contributors, but there are also other contributors like sun and solar activity and the axis of the earth. They're also contributors, and it's up to humans to stop paying lip service to this. And we need a just transition to green energy now, not tomorrow, not later, sorry. And green government is committed to this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And finally, to Janet Lynn, do you believe that humans caused global warming?
Yes. Yes, we know that human activity is causing global warming. It's not a matter of belief. Climate change is happening, whether people believe in it or not. The science is clear. Anthropogenic climate change is directly linked to the fossil fuels that we burn and the land that we clear. Global temperatures have risen, and the last 7 years are the warmest on record ever. The ocean is warming and rising and becoming more acidic. Polar ice and snow are melting. Extreme weather events are becoming common all over the world. Canada has seen raging wildfires, devastating floods, droughts, and coastal erosion. Young people are worried for a reason. The climate crisis is here and it is now, but we can act. New Democrats know that mitigating the climate crisis has to be integrated into everything that we do. We will take climate leadership by cutting emissions by more than half and meeting the 1.5 degree target that scientists say is necessary, creating hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs by investing in clean energy, efficient, affordable homes, electric transit, zero emission vehicles, retrofitting existing housing. We will protect 30% of our land, freshwater, and oceans by 2030 and enshrine a binding environmental bill of rights. We will create an Office of Environmental Justice to address the disproportionate impacts of pollution and biodiversity loss on low-income, racialized, and Indigenous communities. And we will appoint a Climate Emergency Committee of Cabinet and establish a Climate Emergency Secretariat in the Prime Minister's office to ensure a whole of government approach to responding to the climate emergency. The climate crisis is an urgent priority and an existential threat. It calls on all of us to be courageous, act decisively, and to be accountable. Future generations are counting on us. We can show that we are equal to the challenge.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next question now. Do you think that your party's plan to balance the budget is realistic? And we'll go back to Adam.
Thanks, Peter. Actually, there's, I think, only one party that has a chance of forming government on the call here this evening that actually wants to balance the budget, and the Conservative plan is a very realistic plan to balance the budget within 10 years. In fact, I actually think we should be more aggressive and look to balance the budget far in advance of that. You know, before Prime Minister Trudeau took the government, we were spending at the federal level over $30 billion a year in interest payments. That's before we added 450 some odd billion dollars of debt over the last 6 years. So we owe it to future generations to spend smartly today so that they can spend on the social programs that they need in the future. And this is governments of all levels, but I think we owe it to our children. You know, I have two children who are 1 and 2.5 years old. The government that they inherit is going to be significantly impacted, and it's not going to be able to afford healthcare. It's not going to be able to afford education. It's not going to be able to afford our social security programs. So yes, we absolutely need to be focused on restraining the growth of government and making sure that we leave a financial position for the next generation that is fair. We talk a lot about intergenerational equity on the environment. Well, it absolutely applies here, and it means that taxes can remain low on families and small businesses. But you know, spending billions and billions of dollars with no care to rein it in will have devastating consequences for future generations.
Great, thank you. Next to Russ, do you think that your party's plan to balance the budget is realistic?
Yeah, so the whole frivolous spending by our government, it just needs to stop. We need more government transparency, accountability with all aspects of our elected officials. We're literally stealing our children and grandchildren's future of prosperity. Canada currently borrows operating investment capital from other nations and from international bankers and pays interest on the debt incurred over $67 million every single day. The objective is the CHP would restore the Bank of Canada to its proper function. It would create and provide Canada's money supply and provide low interest or interest-free loans to provinces, crown corporations, municipalities for urgently needed infrastructure. Current governments have created a blight over the future of our children as they will be forced to repay the debt plus interest. Our goal with the CHP is to pay off the national debt and introduce mandatory balanced budgets. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Russ. And to Cynthia, do you think that your party's plan to balance the budget is realistic?
Yes. I think we're heading into a very clear need to regenerate the economy. We can't sustain rampant new growth until we assess what needs to change right now. And I think we have a really good idea about that, what that is from what has occurred during the pandemic and those who suffered the most. People, small business, the arts, children, they all matter. We have to look at immigration, ensuring a larger population to secure our landmass. We have a huge landmass with a very small population. We have to understand environmental refugees are coming our way. And while they may bring some hurt, they'll also bring new ideas and approaches we absolutely need and have to respect. The economy is fragile right now, I agree, and so are the people. We will get there, in my opinion, but without a rejuvenated planet to live on, battling food and housing insecurity and growing discontent about the huge inequity we're seeing across the board, taking services away to balance the budget will only hurt more people. And we know how much austerity hurts. So we may not balance the budget immediately, but people will be assured of a better life in the present and in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And to Stephen, do you think that your party's plan to balance the budget is realistic?
Yes, for sure. The PPC's plan to balance the budget within 4 years is tough, but realistic. It's not only realistic, it's essential. If we're going to avoid a fiscal crisis and runaway inflation, which we can already see starting to happen with this high school student council presently running the country, promising all kinds of happy stuff with a credit card maxed out. O'Toole is also promising more billions in new spending. His program is really not much better. Like 10 years, that's 3 consecutive mandates, fat chance. These people all seem to be afraid to have a much needed grown-up conversation about money. The PPC isn't. The Liberals' plan, if followed, we won't balance the budget until as late as 2070. Unless we use tax dollars to pay down debt, we will all pay that regressive tax called inflation. The PPC is promising no new spending, and in fact will aggressively cut spending and yes, eliminate some programs, especially any new ones that the Liberals have burdened us with. Spending cuts will include corporate welfare, 25 billion, foreign development aid, 5 billion, CBC and other media bailouts, 2 billion, most equalization payments, and any other funding which ought to be taken care of directly by provinces or municipalities. We'll simplify the tax code and enforce that code sternly. We will instruct the Bank of Canada also to adopt a 0% inflation target. After the budget's balanced, and only after we do that, we would reduce taxes, including personal and corporate income and capital gains taxes over the course of several budgets as fiscal room allows. This approach will allow Canadians to increase their productivity, which is the single most important factor behind our quality of life. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And now to Crystal. Do you think that your party's plan to balance the budget is realistic?
So during the 2019 federal election, the Green Party was the only party to have their entire budget fully vetted and approved by a parliamentary budget officer as a viable plan. And while this election was called too fast for any party to have their platforms vetted in the same format, much of the 2019 platform has still been included in our 2021 plan. And in order to move forward as a society, we need to move into 2021 and not continuously try to regress to 2030, or in Christian Heritage Party's case, 200 years in the past. To do this, we need to progress with the global $7 trillion clean energy economy, of which Canada can be the clear leaders of. We can create hundreds of thousands of new high-paying jobs with an eye to the future. We are moving towards ever greater automation in the commerce, customer service, transport, and food service industries those jobs will not be available in 10 years. We need to make a clean transition, and right now the time has never been better. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And finally, again, to Janet Lynn, do you think that your party's plan to balance the budget is realistic?
I know that the NDP's fiscal plan is realistic. The platform has been costed. The Independent Institute for Fiscal Responsibility has found that the NDP's 2021 fiscal plan demonstrates realistic economic and fiscal assumptions and responsible management. The pandemic has exposed countless cracks which already existed in Canada's social safety net. The challenge of the pandemic is made worse by the choices made by successive Liberal and Conservative governments over many years to underfund vital services and put the wealthiest individuals and corporations first. The NDP plan is to invest in people, pandemic recovery, lifting seniors and disabled people out of poverty, universal pharmacare and public long-term care, climate change, job creation, housing, reconciliation. This vital investment in Canadians will be offset by taxing the ultra-rich and closing tax loopholes for large profitable corporations. It's time for the wealthy to pay their fair share. As I said in my introduction, if you compare the party platforms, you will find that the NDP plan will result in the lowest projected deficit. Jagmeet Singh has said, "I'm proud to say that we are the only party that has a plan that will ensure we are not going to put any extra burden on working class people, on the middle class, or on small businesses. Our plan is the only one with a credible vision to increase revenue significantly and substantially so that we can invest in the programs that people need, the help that people need, at the same time as putting us in a better situation to reduce our debt. New Democrats are proud to have a fiscal plan that will jumpstart rebuilding while making life easier for ordinary people and building a brighter future for our children."
Thank you. And now for the third question out of 4. What is your stance on mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers? And we'll go back to Adam again.
Thanks, Peter. Well, of course, when you're working in a healthcare setting, it is completely reasonable to request that those serving on the front lines are immunized for various diseases. In fact, as you would know, the Canadian government actually puts out a immunization workers guide for those in the healthcare sector. In fact, I actually checked that earlier today, and they have not updated that in a few years. So if the chief medical officer and those experts recommend that we add the COVID vaccine to that list, then I think that would be a reasonable request. But I'd also note that it is entirely and squarely within provincial jurisdiction to decide what happens within healthcare systems and within hospitals across this country. And so that is a decision that is to be made by a province that is looking at the risks and the severity and protections that it wishes to provide to its vulnerable patients. And it is not a federal government responsibility or jurisdiction to impose a vaccine mandate on healthcare workers. And I would just further add, as we talk about these, the Canadian Medical Association of Journal released a paper on this in February about vaccine mandates for healthcare workers and across the rest of the economy. But we weren't talking about it then because we're not in an election.
Okay, thank you. And now to Russ. What is your stance on mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers?
Mandatory vaccination on healthcare workers, it's a direct violation of our Charter of Rights. The danger of the vaccination should also be looked at as we don't fully know the extent of the success, failure, potential damage caused by these vaccines. I'm hearing that by the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023 is when we will fully know the extent of what these vaccinations are doing. That's a long time to be putting this stuff into people. So the vaccine producers, they've been given carte blanche treatment with zero liability in the event of damages and or deaths. There are many reports of doctors and nurses who have spoken out against the vaccine, only to be threatened with termination or they've been terminated altogether. We need to ensure that these vaccines will not harm our healthcare workers as they are so desperately needed to be in these fields. If these people are truly the professionals, my question would be back is, can't they make an educated decision on their own whether they should be vaccinated or not? Thank you.
Great, thank you, Russ. And now to Cynthia. What is your stance on mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers?
Well, I listen to what Russ has to say, but people are also dying. I have been vaccinated and I've done what I can to encourage vaccination in the Indigenous community against a lot of historical distrust. The experimentation of the Indian residential schools and Indian hospitals hasn't been forgotten by those elders and seniors in our communities. And I had to make a point about being very public with my vaccination to show others it's safe. I had vaccination in January and February, and I'm still standing. I'm fine. So vaccines are mandatory if you want to send your kids to school. Experienced healthcare workers know the value of vaccines, and all will still have a choice, and they will continue to have one. However, they may need the vaccine if they want to travel on a plane, if they want to attend certain kinds of activities, if they want to send their kids to school, or they want to eat in a restaurant for the time being, but it's still going to be their choice. And contrary to what the PPC says, freedom and responsibility is not about doing whatever you want, regardless of the consequences for others. It's about making personal choices and accepting the consequences for those choices like adults. From my perspective, I support it. I agree with Adam. It's not necessarily a federal pursuit. In fact, I was asked at the door, one of the doors, if I was going to defend the vaccines for this woman's choice, and I said, I can do that. I can stand there and say that that you have a choice, and we should respect that. But you're going to have to deal with the provinces who may have a very different kind of an understanding about that and may mandate. And you're going to have to deal with the schools. If your children are over 12 and they want to go to school and you have not vaccinated yourself nor them, they may not be able to go. So for my part, I'd say, please, if you can't make the choice, to get the shot. Our elderly people in long-term care and our children in school are counting on you to do that. and I'm counting on you as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And now to Stephen. What is your stance on mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers?
I'm against mandatory or coerced vaccinations for any worker, any person. Recommend and educate, fine. That's okay for governments to do. Now, I'll say public health is very, very important, but individual civil rights are even more important. The right to make one's own decisions about what is done to your body is fundamental, and you don't have to explain yourself or argue with people why you decide how you do. Now, it's the state's job to protect rights, not mess with them, especially to try to respond to a fear-ridden mob whose fear the state carefully crafted and fed in the first place. I'm not anti-vax and I'm not anti-mask. I'm against forcing these things and against the show me your papers society. If you can't abide this nuance, I'm afraid that you might have become a totalitarian. Now, the PPC will protect your rights under our Constitution, the Charter of Rights, and the Bill of Rights. We will not implement any sort of national vax passport and will cancel any such thing our predecessors put in place. Our approach is to concentrate on protecting the vulnerable more while restricting the healthy and productive less. We will oppose any provinces that attempt vax mandates, passports, or lockdowns, and withhold transfer funding if we have to. We will instruct the Department of Justice to challenge all provincial and municipal laws that unconstitutionally infringe citizens' rights, and where possible, assist or participate in class action and other lawsuits against employers who acquiesce to these unjust laws and terminated or coerced employees over vaccine status. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And now we'll move to Crystal. What is your stance on mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers?
So the Green Party of Canada is a science-based party, and I do support the vaccine as well. It has been proven safe and effective. I also think that more discussions are needed in regards to the mandates and the passports. I think it's important to recognize that those who will be impacted by the choice to not get vaccinated, we're going to be seeing a lot of marginalized people be impacted by this. And like Cynthia said, Indigenous people, we have a history of vaccines in a negative way. I think it's also important to recognize that much of this mistrust in the vaccine is coming from a mistrust of the government. And I don't think that people need to be punished for not trusting the government. I think it's a much greater issue than that. But I am in support of the vaccine. So for frontline workers, sorry. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Crystal. And finally, again, to Janet Lynn. What is your stance on mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers?
Thank you. I'm glad we're talking about and questioning mandatory vaccination. That's the wonderful thing about being Canadian. We can question and discuss our rights and responsibilities without fear of reprisal. It's how we know that we do not live in an authoritarian or totalitarian state. I think it's important to distinguish between forced vaccination and mandatory vaccination. No one is talking about forcibly administering vaccines in Canada. It's never happened and it will not happen. That's fear-mongering. Mandatory vaccination, however, is happening now in many sectors. Healthcare workers, education workers, public service workers, and university students are all required to be vaccinated unless they have a valid medical exemption, with the strong support of the Canadian Labour Congress. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has repeatedly pressed Justin Trudeau for guidelines and a clear timeline for mandatory vaccination for federally regulated employees. Yes, the Canadian Charter guarantees our rights and freedoms, but those rights are not absolute. In a free and democratic society, our individual rights are lawfully limited when they infringe on the rights and freedoms of others. We are in a global pandemic. COVID vaccines save lives, and getting vaccinated is the right thing to do for ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, and our global community. I want to note too that immune compromised people are also productive members of society, and should not be made to stay home as they would be under the PPC plan. I support mandatory vaccination for all workers who interact with the public sector workers, and those who work indoors with others. Vaccination is not a partisan issue. It is a public health issue. The federal leaders recently came together at the invitation of Jagmeet Singh to record a message urging all adult Canadians to get vaccinated. I invited the Simcoe North candidates to do the same, and 4 of us recorded and released that video this week. Thank you. To repeat what we said in that message, we are all in this together. Get the shot.
Great, thank you. Certainly under different circumstances, we could have gone on with that with a pretty juicy debate, but we'll have to leave it at that. Now for the final question of the night. The federal government subsidizes $500,000 on behalf of every man, woman, and child in this country to the oil and gas industry. Now, that seems like a high number to me. So I did try to qualify that. And I came up with 3 articles: paying polluters how much Canada gave in federal finance support for oil and gas in 2020. And that's from Environmental Defense Report, April 15th, 2021, claims 18 million. Crown Corporation, Export Development Canada, EDC, said it provided 8.1 billion to businesses in the oil and gas sector in 2020, down from 12.5 billion in 2018. That was posted on CBC News, April 15th, 2021. And then Canada provides almost 10 times this support to its energy industry as the US on per capita basis. That was from the Financial Post, July 28th, 2021. So with that in mind, I guess the question would be, do you agree with these subsidies to the oil and gas industry? And we'll start with Adam.
Thanks, Peter, actually, and thank you for taking the time to do a little bit of calculations there, because the $500,000 number implies $18 trillion a year of subsidies to the oil and gas sector, which is quite clearly not correct. So if we want to talk about subsidies for oil and gas sector, we need to understand at least a couple of things. The first is some of what's being calculated is tax breaks and benefits that are provided to every corporation. That includes the wage subsidy and includes other tax breaks. Secondly, it includes royalty payments. So when companies extract resources from the ground, they actually pay a royalty on depending on how much they extract to the governments. Well, a lot of that subsidy is actually a discount on the royalties that they provide. So we're not talking about cash that goes directly to these organizations. It's a lessening of the royalty that they pay, which means if they don't extract the material, they don't get paid. So when people talk about having all of this money that we could spend elsewhere that we were previously spending on subsidies to oil and gas companies, is just not true. Like, we can't create money from nowhere. So I think that's the first thing. But if we want to talk broader about corporate welfare, absolutely. Corporate welfare is really bad deals for the taxpayers. If you contrast what's happened during COVID, we gave over $6 billion to publicly traded multinational corporations. I won't name them because they won't be very pleased. But what did they do? They paid dividends, they bought back shares, and they paid executive compensation. There were no stipulations to any of the grants or bailouts that we provided to any companies during this crisis and pandemic. You contrast that with what we did during the financial crisis. We got equity shares when we did bailouts for the auto sector. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Adam. And we'll move to Russ, and I'll just ask the last part of the question. Do you agree with these subsidies to oil and gas industry?
So the CHP is opposed to all government subsidies to all businesses, not just the oil and gas industries. The government should not be picking and choosing winners and losers, nor should the taxpayer money be used to prop up businesses. I read an article where Air Canada received $400 million for wage subsidies just last year. The CBC receives over $1.5 billion directly from the government annually. Justin Trudeau has given $595 million in subsidies directed only to those media outlets which support his policies, further influencing public opinions. What the government needs to just cut red tape, lower taxes on all individuals and businesses, But first, it just needs to stop the reckless spending. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Russ. Now we'll move to Cynthia. Do you agree with these subsidies to the oil and gas industry?
No, I don't. But I also think we have to, we can't just cut everything back, because how the heck are we going to pay for our health care? We have a system that is, held up by a small population. So I think we need to think about how we actually spend money and who we support. But anyway, I think we're well on our way to building a new approach to energy acquisition. And, we've been waiting a long time, and I don't know why, because we've been hearing scientific warnings for well over 50 years now. And I've been out to the oil sands myself, and I've seen the kind of devastation that they've wrought on the planet. You can see the oil sands from space now. They're so big and so ugly. But why are we not putting those resources into training people to take up new forms of energy work and business, rather than ensuring dividends get paid? Massive profit in certain sectors demonstrate that there's a lot of room to enhance the creation and building of energy alternatives and retrain workers. Gas and oil, we know they're not going away immediately, but we no longer have permission to be blind to the reality of global warming and extreme weather events. I mean, we're having them here. We're having tornadoes right in our own backyard. We have the science to demonstrate from disasters that have already occurred, that have taken planes out of the air. 9/11 would be a good indicator of that. Cars and buses still run with gas off the roads because of massive flooding. And of course, the pandemic. That, we've seen that the earth and the water and the planet can regenerate itself rather quickly if we actually allow it to happen. So we're the ones who have to learn how to stop. We have to demonstrate respect for the planet that we all have to live on. There's an old Indigenous saying that says, when will humans understand that you cannot eat money? No one needs billions of dollars in their bank accounts so they can sleep at night, or to send themselves to the moon. People are starving. People are fragile. There's an economy that needs to be put into the right direction. And we need a humane distribution of wealth and access to a decent life for everyone, so we can all do better. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Cynthia. And now to Stephen. Do you agree with these subsidies to the oil and gas industry?
I am against federal subsidies to the oil and gas industry. Absolutely. The reason has nothing to do with the particular nature of this industry, but because I oppose all forms of corporate welfare and corporate capture of the regulatory system, the latter of which is, I think, the bigger problem, in my opinion. The only exceptions might be to fund remediation of environmental damage left behind by bankrupt oil companies and possible compensation to workers harmed as a result of corporate malfeasance. So there are some exceptions. I also have no problem with EDC receivables insurance against bad behavior by foreign customers, but that's not really a subsidy per se. Eliminating this potential $10 billion plus basket of subsidies will be very helpful in balancing the budget. The actual savings will be bigger because we will not pick on the oil and gas industry. We will treat all corporations the same. The government has no business trying to pick winners or bail out losers. A free market does that automatically. There are a lot of industries that are being corrupted by government subsidy and dirigisme. PPC government will make sure that the market works as it's supposed to and not meddle in it. You can't be a good referee if you're also trying to be a player or coach. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And next we're going to move to Crystal. Do you agree with these subsidies to the oil and gas industry?
I do not. $20 billion, that's the amount of wealth that billionaires in Canada increased in 2019. And the wealthiest people in Canada, they increased their wealth by $63.5 billion as 20% of low-income jobs vanished. And it's no wonder 40% of voters in Simcoe North do not show up on election day. Our government spends more time and money looking after big corporations instead of taking care of Canadians. And I don't agree with these subsidies. And I think that they harm all Canadians, especially the lower middle class and marginalized groups. And we need to divest in corporations and oil and invest in clean energies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And finally, again, to Janet Lynn. Do you agree with these subsidies to the oil and gas industry?
I do not agree with corporate oil and gas subsidies, and neither does the NDP. I checked several sources. Last year, the Trudeau government gave $18 billion of your money to prop up already wealthy oil and gas companies. Despite repeated promises to phase them out, the Trudeau government gave more money to the fossil fuel sector last year. Your money went to exploration, production, refining, and transportation of more fossil fuels. It went to build and expand pipelines that violate Indigenous rights and put ecosystems at risk. Your money went to supply fracked liquid natural gas, one of Canada's largest single sources of carbon pollution. O'Toole's Conservatives are promising to spend public money to push through the pipelines and boost production of polluting liquefied natural gas. New Democrats are different. We know that public funds are best spent supporting the transition to renewable energy rather than on profitable oil and gas companies. We will fulfill Canada's G20 commitment to eliminate these fossil fuel subsidies and redirect that money to low carbon initiatives and the green economy. We will ensure those funds go to supporting Canadian jobs, not executives or shareholders. And we'll make sure that future governments can't reverse this by putting in place legislation to ban any future oil, gas, and pipeline subsidies.
That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for answering all those questions. And I do apologize for not being able to ask more questions as they were all submitted. And now we'll move to the closing remarks, and we'll begin in reverse order. And that is Janet Lynn Durnford for the NDP.
Thank you. It's a small correction. It's Durnford. My husband always says, you don't drive a Ford, you drive that Durnford. New Democrats are different because we are working people. For our whole history, we have fought for better working conditions and standards that lift everyone up. Jagmeet Singh doesn't answer to the powerful. In the pandemic, he delivered real help by pushing for wage and business subsidies. As Prime Minister, he'll make the ultra-rich and big corporations pay their fair share so we can build a recovery that works for everyone. What does that mean for you in Simcoe North? Continued pandemic wage and rent subsidies, a hiring bonus to pay the employer portion of EI and CPP, capping credit card merchant fees at a maximum of 1%, and universal pharmacare that will save employers with benefits $600 per year per employee. Jagmeet knows that better is possible. I know that we can have a future that's more affordable, equal, hopeful, and secure. My name is Janet Lynn Durnford, and as your NDP Member of Parliament, I promise to work for you. Miigwech, merci, thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, it's the Green Party, Crystal Brooks.
One of our biggest issues here in Simcoe North that we need to address is the Alliston Aquifer. While our provincial MPP has failed our community on this issue, I feel that we need to elect an MP that will protect our most valuable resource. And locally here, the world's purest water is being drained and polluted to the tune of 10 million gallons per day to wash rocks to build Toronto condos. So I am encouraging the community and all of the other candidates on this panel to join us on Friday at 5 p.m. on Darby Road in Waverly and Tiny Township to raise our voices and have them heard on this important issue. I feel that it's time for change and we can no longer expect life to continue as it has. Economy is on the verge of collapse, environment on the verge of collapse, housing crisis, and so many more issues that are barely being addressed. I am the only candidate running for a party that doesn't force their MPs to vote their party line. I can represent you directly and not just my party's personal interests. We need change in Ottawa and I can be that voice. Vote green and make change that will actually make a difference in your life. Once again, everyone should join us on Friday at the Teton Pit and have your voice heard on election day. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Crystal. Now from the PPC, Stephen Mack.
Hello, thank you again. You know, this is no time to vote out of habit, loyalty, or by what your favorite color is. This is not a popularity contest either. Simcoe North needs a change. We don't need any more, aw shucks, nice guy, whipped vote, backbench, potted plant politics. I mean, vote for forceful, principled, values-based representation by a member of a party that puts Canadians first. How about some actual conservatism, but with an emphasis on freedom? And NDP, you know, please explain how you calculate your fair share of what somebody else has built or earned. Liberals, please explain how you're going to do better in the future. There are problems we can all see. Voters won't punish a government that admits mistakes and talks about fixing them. The PPC is the medicine this country needs to be able to responsibly and resolutely recover from the economic and psychic blows that Canadians have taken from the pandemic and from the government's response to it. The PPC is offering a new injection, proven to be a safe and effective thing in making societies flourish. It is time for a freedom injection, a vaccine against authoritarianism. I say that answer is the PPC. Please check out our platform online and feel free to contact me with any questions or suggestions. PPC for a strong and free Canada. Let's do this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. And now we'll move to the Liberal Party's Cynthia Wesley Eskimo.
Take it off mute. Sorry about that. Thanks, everybody. It's been a very interesting evening. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for allowing us the privilege of coming and having this conversation with you and some interesting questions. I think that is on everybody's mind, no matter what party you run for. And I know that there's a lot going on in the riding. I mean, we all have the pleasure of actually talking to a lot of people through a process like this. And we know that the monuments is an issue and that people on the ground are really concerned about that. We know that Port McNichol has the Keewatin that it'd like to keep in the riding and in its place where it now is. We know that housing is a question that everybody has been talking about, and certainly, of course, rental access. And we know that we have some really good people. So I want to give a shout out to Camp Davidson for the work that he's doing on creating affordable housing in the riding and actually working with people on the ground and has a committee set up. There's other people that have got regenerative projects on the go that I think need to be supported. I mean, Ottawa is not, that's, for me, it's like, as I've said before, as an Indigenous woman, I'm not looking for the government to save anybody. We have to do the work ourselves. It's our democracy. It's our lives. It's our community. And we can all work together, I think, very well. So I think there's a lot going on here. The plan that the Liberal Party has put forward is a straight up plan. It's very clear. It's very straightforward. Yes, it costs money. So does every plan that's being put forward here cost money. But I think that it's about people. And and the reason I run for the Liberal Party and the reason I've been a Liberal for most of my entire life when I've been voting is because their values align with mine. They care about the vulnerable. They care about people who need those services. They care about maintaining this healthcare system that we have in this country, even though it's getting incredibly expensive to do so. We know that it's necessary, and we also care about the children and making sure that there's daycare. Why people say, well, why is it happening now? Why didn't it happen before? Well, because Chrystia Freeland is a woman, and Chrystia Freeland is now the Deputy Prime Minister, and she said it's now. We're doing it now. So I think there's a lot going on here that is important. I'm happy to represent your interests. I live in the riding. I've been in the riding and stay in the riding, and I'm very happy to take your voice to Ottawa and deliver it in a very good way to all the tables that are necessary to make this riding everything it can be. So thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Cynthia. And now for closing comments, we go over to Russ Emo in the Christian Heritage Party.
Well, I just want to thank each and every one of the panelists today. Did we want this election at this time? Obviously, we're hearing a lot of people say no, this was not a good time to have an election, which we understand the cost and the timing was maybe not a good time. But what I see here is I see individuals that I'm looking at right now who truly care about our country. Each one here today, and I'm talking to the constituents out there to, look at these people and say, here's individuals who have taken the time of their busy lives and have come out and have come forward to answer questions that you have put forward, and that These people are here to represent you and want to represent you each in Ottawa to help make this country better. So I just give a great big to my panelists out there. Thank you so much for taking the time out, for answering all the questions, and for the people who have submitted the questions. Thank you. Bottom line is that we need to get this country back on its feet. We need to get going. We need to get everything back to where we need to be. The country is spiraling out of control with debt. We need to get the debt under control. We need to get people working. We need to get the country. I know I'm repeating myself, and I apologize for that, but I cannot emphasize that enough. We need to get people back to where they feel proud of themselves. And the one way to get proud of being a Canadian is working and contributing to this great country. So I hope I can be your representative in Ottawa, to be a voice in Ottawa, to help put everything forward for that. And I would appreciate you voting for me, Russ Emo of the CHP, on September 20th. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. And finally, Adam Chambers from the Conservative Party.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you to the Chamber, but of course, thank you to all of our fellow candidates tonight. It takes a lot of courage to put your name on a ballot and to talk to voters and to tell them about your party's plans and to how you'll work with them. You can see there's a very high quality and high caliber of people that are running here in Simcoe North, which I think is a great thing for democracy. Very respectful, wonderful individuals, any of whom would do an excellent job representing us in Ottawa. But look, I come before you tonight with experience in the private sector, in experience in government previously, working with Minister Flaherty, which was an incredible opportunity. I learned the value of public service. I learned the value of fiscal responsibility. We need to make sure that the future generations have resources to take care of the social programs, the social problems and challenges that they have. I think, we didn't get to talk a lot about it tonight, but hearing from a lot of small business owners about labor shortages, getting the economy back on track, and of course, a really important conversation that I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk about next time is reconciliation with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. So the vote is on Monday, September 20th. Please make an informed decision, do a little bit of research, pick one of these wonderful candidates to vote, but absolutely make sure that you go out and vote on September 20th. That's on Monday. Don't miss it. It's really important. And it's a sign of a strong democracy that we can have a conversation like here tonight and a wonderful debate nationally. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Great, thanks, Adam. And that wraps it up. And I'll just say a few things in conclusion. I'll certainly say thank you. Thanks for all taking your time to do this. And by you all being here, and for those tuning in this evening, it proves your political involvement that is so important to this country. As controversial as issues can be, as divisive as and polarizing conversations might become, it's important to remember that this is democracy. Us being here tonight is democracy. The conversations that result from this evening is democracy. But if there's something I would ask in the following days before the election, it would be to talk to the people who are not here tonight. Ask them to vote. Tell them to vote, no matter what side of the conversation they might stand. What's important is that they exercise their right on Monday, September 20th. I'd like to thank Kathy and Catherine behind the scenes at the Chamber here who put this together. I hope it went fairly smoothly. On my end, it seemed to. I guess there were some hiccups here and there, but I hope that's all right. And hopefully, we'll, next time around, we'll get even better. Or maybe we'll see it face to face. Hopefully that'd be even better. And of course, I'd like to thank again the candidates, their teams, their volunteers, and who have committed time, indicated so much work in their campaigns. Please note that this meeting has been recorded and will be posted on our social media tomorrow. And this concludes this evening's forum. Thank you for tuning in and have a good night, and please stay safe. Thank you.